Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to KTSW Sports 360. I've got a special guest with me, new coach for San Marcos Rattler football, as well as head track coach and recruiting coordinator, Coach Marvin Nash. How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic, Jude. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. We truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come talk to us and share with the Rattler faithful what you're all about to get to know you a little bit.
Absolutely, man. Let me first just say that I love the platform. I love what you do for Texas State. I love what you do for San Marcos and the Rattler family in general. And I'm just excited to be on board, excited to be a part of the family.
Hey, we're happy to have you a part of it, but just to talk about you and your journey a little bit, just where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Oh, well, I grew up in a tiny, tiny town in Southeast Texas, New Waverly, Texas.
Gotcha.
Uh, if I can remember correctly, I had 43 people in my high school graduating class.
Oh my gosh.
So it was when I say tiny, I mean tiny. We didn't even have a Dairy Queen. It was that small. But I went from there. I played football at Austin College, a small D3
Oh,
school up in
okay.
Sherman, Texas.
Know where that's at.
And yeah, I did my thing there. Had fun, enjoyed myself. Played ball for 4 years. Started for 4 years, and then I had to grow up and go get a job and do all that fun stuff. So I entered the mortgage industry of all things to start, and it was a lucrative time for the financial industry, man. So I did really well, but I hated sitting in the cubicle. I missed the smell of fresh cut grass. I missed the turf. I missed the Friday night lights. So I went to go try to find a job coaching football. You know, so I called a buddy. He just happened to be a receivers coach for Mr. Coach John Walsh. And he said, "Yeah, I think we can find you something." So I entered at the middle school level for a couple of years, and I never lost touch with Coach Walsh since then. Worked for his staff at Geyer for a number of years, and I've been a few other places, but I'm happy to be back with him now.
That's awesome. It's funny that the second question I had was like, how did you get into coaching? Did you go to school for coaching? But you kind of answered that one for me. Did you,
Uh,
just out of curiosity, did you have to get a teacher's certificate or what did you, because I know you said you went in the financial industry. What was your path to get into coaching?
Yes, to get into coaching. So it's very similar to what's happening right now with COVID-19.
Hmm.
TEA waived having to take your content test and your PPR test right away. So I went to an alternative certification program. From there, I could get hired as long as I was enrolled, but I had 18 calendar months to complete the program. So, needless to say, it was I wanted to knock that out and get it over with. So I jumped in that way, alternative certification, and then got my traditional certification right after.
That's awesome. So you said you entered, it was under Coach Walsh, but you were at a middle school level. So were you at the middle school that fed into Geyer at the time, or how did that work?
Yes, yes, which is it's kind of funny. The first group of guys that I had at that middle school were part of the first state championship team
Oh
that
my
Coach
gosh.
Walsh had at
Wow.
Geyer. So what I love about Coach Walsh is that he does a vertical alignment. So your middle schools are going to be run exactly like your high school. The elementary schools that feed into your middle schools, their PE classes are going to be run exactly like the high school. So you get that vertical alignment, you get that family feel, and even though it's a multi-school district, it still felt like a one-horse town. It still felt like everybody was a wildcat there. So that's what makes me so excited about San Marcos. We actually have that here. Everybody's a Rattler, and so just having that experience under him, knowing how to build a championship program, I mean, it helped me just unbelievably throughout my career.
Wow. It's so funny that that was your path because, excuse me, I think about Coach Pinchback, San Marcos High School's basketball coach. He started out as the middle school, in middle school as well. And it was the same thing. The kids he coached then ended up being a state championship team at DeSoto. So that is something that is definitely common now at San Marcos High School. It's wonderful to see. And speaking of San Marcos, I know you were at Eaton last year, correct?
That's correct.
Why did you choose to come to San Marcos?
Well, really, I was very, very happy at Eaton. Wonderful, wonderful community. I was the assistant head football coach there. Handled recruiting, had doing great things, and it's a program that's on the rise. But it's one of those things. Once you've established a mentor. I mean, for the past 15 years, if I ever need anything, I could call Coach Walsh, and he'd give me any type of guidance that I needed. So when I saw what was happening at San Marcos, I gave him a congratulatory text, just say, "Hey, congratulations, good to see where you're going." He said, "Well, we'll talk soon." And so us talking soon turned into me saying, "Hey, I'd love to join you." So it worked out just that way, and
Yeah.
really that quick too.
Wow. So what have you heard about San Marcos like going into it? I know like a lot of people they talk about the facilities. I know there's the river and everything, but other than that, what have you really what's been your impression so far?
It's a Central Texas just hidden gem. It's a jewel, man, and of course, it's accentuated by the beautiful outdoor surroundings, and of course,
Right.
the facilities are great. But it's more the people. The community of San Marcos is just it's like a small town feel in a larger city. So that's the best way to describe it. It's a huge college town, but it just feels like what I'm accustomed to, a small town where you get to know everyone, you get to build just authentic and genuine relationships. And then the education system, with what's happening now, with even with our principal, Miss Presley, I was just so impressed. Just those few conversations we've had already with her vision for the school, and I just want to add value. So when you get to a place where you see that there may be some spots where you can fit in and just continue to boost the value of the area, the program, the school, it's a no-brainer from that point.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had the pleasure of sitting down and introducing ourselves to Miss Presley after basketball games and whatnot. So they're great people, and we truly appreciate all that they allow us to do and how involved they allow us to be with their kids. Because I know you can't just let anybody in. That's what Coach Pinchback always told us. So we appreciate them letting us in. Now I got to ask you. So have you seen the stadium?
I have seen the stadium. That was one of the first things Coach Wall showed me when I showed up on campus, and blown away is an
Yeah.
understatement. Beautiful.
Well, I can tell you from someone who sits in the press box every home game, I mean, we're just pampered. I mean, the press box is just, it's comfortable. It's so nice. The chairs are great. And we even have video running while the game is going on. So there's TVs in the press box. So maybe
Wow.
sometimes we're at the very left side, right, of the press box. And on the right side of the field is where the offense is operating. Well, I can just go look up at the TV and I can call this game perfectly. I don't have to like, bend over and try to see what's going on. So it's wonderful facilities. It's a great stadium. You can see it from forever out, but it's beautiful, man.
Absolutely. Then the same can be said for the indoor facility and the
Oh
coaches'
my gosh.
offices. It's nothing like it. I talk to a lot of guys nationwide, just the big coaches fraternity that we have, and that's one of first things I said was, guys, I'm headed to a gold mine. This place is beautiful. You have to you can see the pictures I've taken. So I'm blown away by the investment that the community's made in helping Rattler athletics be the best it can be. And I look forward to adding value to that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, just to talk a little bit about your positions on the football team specifically, I know you'll be a co-offensive coordinator. If you don't mind talking about them, what will be your duties? Because I know you'll be working with Coach Vallejo a lot, but other than that, like, what are your specific duties?
Absolutely. Coach Vallejo and I have worked together for years. I mean, the same amount of time as I've worked with Coach Walsh. I'll be over the wide receivers.
Okay.
Be working with the passing game a lot. But I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Within this offense, I've coached offensive line, I've coached tight ends, I've coached running backs, I've coached receivers. So I know pretty much every offensive position in the offense that we run. In my other journeys, I mean, I've coached defense. I've been a defensive coordinator. I've been a special teams coordinator. So I'm one of those guys. I look to fit in wherever you need me, and this year they need me as at wide receiver. So I'm happy to jump on.
Awesome, awesome. Well, have you got to watch any tape of your guys that much?
Oh
What's
yeah,
been?
oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah, you have.
And I'm very, very, very impressed by the guys that we have coming back. There's a rare combination of size and speed. A couple of guys I'll name: Nate Henry. I
Yeah.
know Cannon's amazing as a safety, but I plan to use him a lot on offense
Oh
as
yeah.
well. And then Q, I won't try to pronounce his name, but Q is amazing as well. Caduce, I think I said that
Yes, you got
correctly.
it. You got it.
So and Malik. I mean, I could go on and on. We have so many guys that can contribute in so many different ways, and I just look forward to putting my hands on them and showing them the way that we run things with the new regime coming in and help them maximize their potential.
That's for sure. So, do you plan on using Q and Canon a little bit more in the offense this year?
That's been the vision thus
Okay,
far.
thus far.
Well, I know we're going to play it by ear. One thing that we don't want to do with all this time off, we don't want to put too much on any young
Yeah,
man. It's I've been down to Central Texas here recently. It's pretty hot most of the time, so we want to make sure that physically they're ready to handle that as well.
For sure, for sure. Well, I remember they did play a little bit last year, and both of them made some big plays in their time. I was just curious from a broadcaster's perspective because that makes me excited because they're athletes on the defensive side of the ball too, both pretty good defensive backs as well. But you mentioned Nate Henry last year for me when I was out at practice and then seeing him in the games. I mean, you could just see obviously all these guys are really talented, like you mentioned Malik Gordon too, but it was awesome to see him kind of start to explode in practice and then it translate onto the field later against some of, the toughest teams in the state like Clemens, Judson, and Steele.
Absolutely. That was one thing that when I saw him in person, I was like, okay, first of all, he's bigger in person than he is on tape, which is always a plus, you know. And then his route running ability is already just spectacular. So just take some fine tuning, and we'll teach up the new offense and the new routes that we run, and I think he's going to have a breakout
I couldn't agree more with you, Coach. And I think I remember there was one thing that Coach Soto told me about him last year on a Bobcat radio. He was just like, he is a D1 athlete. And
year.
then you see it on the field, and he's got all the tools, just like a lot of these other guys do as well. But wanted to move on to a different position that is a little bit new to Rattler football that I think you and KTSW can probably work in conjunction a little bit on this, but you're the new recruiting coordinator. And I've seen you, tweeting a lot, showcasing a lot of Rattlers athletes and trying to get them scouted by a lot of these other players. Cause like you said, Cannon, one of the most talented, hardworking kids I've seen in a while, really in my time. So what is your plan as the recruiting coordinator? I'm sure it's not just Twitter.
Right. Yes. It's really threefold, man. I think the first part is starting with educating our student athletes and their parents on how the recruiting process works. It's you almost have to decode it. It's unbelievable how it works. One thing that I will do is make sure our kids are ready academically to accept scholarships. That's always underrated, always looked over, but that's the most important part. You see far too many kids with D1 talent that have grades that just don't cut it, and then they don't get the opportunities that they deserve athletically because they didn't work hard enough in the classroom. So that's the basis for everything. We're going to make sure that every kid is where they need to be academically. Second part is setting realistic expectations with the parents, of course, so they know, just because my son is 6'4", 6'5", doesn't necessarily equal Division 1 athlete. There's a lot of things that go into that. So we have to make sure that they understand that what college coaches are looking for, so they can help prepare their kids for that as well. Other part of that is a lot of behind the scenes. So if it's I always say it's like having a third sport as a coach because it's year round. It's something that never, never, never stops. I was on the phone right before you reached out to me for the interview with multiple college coaches of all levels, D2, D1, and just talking over kids that we have in our prospect sheet. Like our prospect sheet's already reached 200 plus colleges, and I just got here. We just
Wow.
put it together. So it's something that we're working to get our kids' names out there, and college coaches have time. Everyone has my phone number, so we talk a lot about what they're looking for, if I have a kid that can fit the need, and if they fit it academically. And then the very last part's the fun part, which is where I get to make videos and put it out on Twitter, and that's the fun part.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Well, it definitely sounds like it. Like you said, it's year round. I can see that that's not just an extra position. That's like a whole nother job, it seems like.
Oh yeah, and it's funny because you'll call and text some college coaches multiple times, and they won't say anything to you, and then all of a sudden somebody offers this kid that you've been sending in
Yeah.
their text messages, and then they're blowing you up now. So it's you always have to have your phone ready. My family is like, Dad, you're always on your phone. It's like, yeah, there's a reason. I'm trying to work for our kids.
Exactly. Hey, and that's the best way to work, honestly.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you're also the new head track coach. What's your philosophy in the world of track and field?
Yes, I'm a big train smart guy. I know a lot of people confuse being exhausted for being in shape. That doesn't translate. You can't train speed and be exhausted at the same time. In my past, I've worked primarily with sprinters, but I also have worked with our field events and our long distance guys. But the main thing is to be very, very event specific in your training, because it's not a one size fit all sport. So that's the main thing for me. Also, it has to work in conjunction with everything that you do. I'm coming from a small town. I have a small town mentality. So if you're running track and you want to play baseball, I want you to be able to do both. If you're doing spring football, I want you to be able to run track and participate in spring football and there not be any conflicts. So we schedule smart, we schedule our meets smart, we train smart, and that way our guys can get the most out of their high school experience.
Definitely, definitely. It's funny you mentioned the other sports. That was my next question. I was going to say, obviously, there are some students who track and field is their main athletic event, but how beneficial do you believe it is for other athletes to participate in track?
I saw a T-shirt one time and it said, "My sport is your sport's punishment," and I thought that was hilarious. But it's so true. Like you, a sport that I guess it translates for everything, for soccer, for basketball, for baseball, football, of course. Getting up and down the court, getting up and down the field, being faster than the guy in front of you. That's beneficial in every single sport. Well, track does that for you. So I would encourage every athlete to participate in track, just to give it a shot, even if you just do the workouts and don't necessarily even go to a track meet, because it's only going to benefit you in the sport that you want to primarily focus on.
That's awesome. And it's awesome that you'll be able to involve with a lot of those speed guys on the outside that are play receiver that'll probably want to be involved in that. That's a great, you talk about vertical alignment. I know that was more to do with the middle schoolers and the elementary schoolers, and that whole thing. But also, hey, that's vertical alignment right there when it talks to receivers going and playing track or running track.
hmm Absolutely. I'm a big proponent of building a full athletic program. And I think Coach Walsh and we see eye to eye completely on that. We don't want to just be great in football. We will be great in football, but we'll be great in basketball and track and girls basketball and volleyball and everything else because we're building a family where we work together and encourage each other.
Yes, sir. And just to give you a little bit of a heads up, Jared Teo, the new volleyball coach, one of my good friends, Connor McKinnon, who is also an employee at KTSW Sports, he'll be interviewing Coach Teo next Friday, I believe, or it might be tomorrow. I'm not entirely. I think it actually no, it is tomorrow, and that will be released Monday. So we're trying to cover those sports as well, and hope to promote kids across your program.
Awesome, awesome, and he is a phenomenal coach. I know a little bit about the volleyball circuit with my daughter, and he
Oh,
is
really?
an amazing volleyball coach. So it's gonna be fantastic.
And it's funny you mentioned about the volleyball circuit because one of the other big platforms that KTSW does is what we call the volleyball games as well. And that's one of Connor's big things at Texas State. And Coach Hewitt, who's the new volleyball coach replacing Karen Chisholm, who's there for 40 years, he was really good friends with Coach Teo. So he actually was able to get Connor in contact with him after the most recent Bobcat Radio. So that's awesome. That's another thing that we hope to see more of. I know Coach Walsh is good friends with Coach Spavital after he recruited JW. We're hoping to get a
Mhm.
little bit more involvement from Texas State and you guys. And then, we have all these big ideas, but maybe in the future, if we could do like a video feature with like both Rattler and Bobcat players, that would be something that would be awesome as well.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, just the next question. So I was watching this interview that San Marcos shared about you at your time at Eaton. And you mentioned in this interview how when you were younger, your mother was diagnosed with cancer and
Mhm.
your coaches filled that void. How important are relationships for you as a coach?
Relationships are everything. And the reason why I say that is because the road for me could have gone completely different. I mean, I was 15 years old when my mom got sick, and she was sick throughout my sophomore year of college. And there were high school coaches that stepped in and taught me things like tying a tie. I had a flat one time, showed me how to change a flat, but they also made sure I was okay, and it showed that as a young man, it's okay to be in tune with your feelings. It's okay to speak up when you don't feel well, when you're having a rough day, and I mean, that meant the world to me. And so from that point on, I knew in some capacity I would be a coach. I didn't know I would be a high school coach at that time. When I went to school, it was to get into finance and I was going to get my MBA and be a big time businessman or whatnot. But coaching became my calling because of what coaches did for me. The same can be said when I got to college. I would not have made it those first 2 years so far away from home if I didn't have coaches that truly cared. And what's crazy is that my college head coach, he's now the athletic director at Austin College. He's always number one on my reference sheet. So when I
Wow.
got my job here at San Marcos, that was the first person they called, and I mean it's like a father to me because that's what I needed at that time. And so the mantra for me was always be who you needed when you were younger. And so that means I'm not allowed to have a bad day. It doesn't mean I'm faking it or I'm being unauthentic. It means that some people might depend on you because you might be the only smile they get that day.
Yeah.
You might be the only kind word they hear that day. So that's important to me. That's the most important thing. I think coaching becomes secondary because kids can't listen to people that they don't like, and they definitely won't listen to people they don't trust.
That's one I couldn't agree more. I'll tell you a little story about myself. If the listeners don't want to hear about me, I'm sorry because I got to mention this. But growing up, it was mainly me and my mom, and I played football up until my freshman year. It just kind of wasn't fun for me after that, but I ended up joining the speech and debate team, and my coach in speech and debate, her, and now after I've graduated, her husband, I mean, they've been like a second set of parents to me. And it's because of the relationships that she built with me. And, I've been able to still give back and coach at camps since my time there. And, this year we had a student and that I had coached, and, the culture since then has kind of been more rooted in those relationships. And she ended up getting third at nationals this year as a sophomore.
Wow.
So, I just realized I had been talking to Coach Pinchback. I had been talking to Coach Walsh because that was this past June. And I was just like, I thought of this phrase, it popped up into my head. And I was like, this is all because of relationships. Because I had kind of built a relationship with, he's ended up being the valedictorian this past year. He graduated, but he had to switch events into a different, because he had done debate and then he went into speech, which is what I did. And I had taught it to him and kind of taught him everything I knew on my way out my senior year. And then he was able to pass that knowledge on. He ended up being way better than me one state. But it feels better even then. Just I was so happy for him. But he passed all that knowledge down, and that's all because of relationships. So the success that now she's having, my old coach, and of course Cameron, the girl who got third. I mean, it's all because of relationships, and it just made me think relationships build championships. Like
Mhm.
that is just like that's kind of been my phrase that I need to like trademark it or something. But ever since that day, I thought of that, and I was just thinking, now you're mentioning this, and it's just everywhere, man. But if you want to have success, I mean, if you have great relationships with people, it's going to come.
Without a doubt, man. I know I mentioned that first group that I coached that went on to win the state championship at Geyer. One of those same young men. This was February. We're at a restaurant and we see him and his whole family. I give his dad a big hug and mom a big hug and grandma, like everybody, the whole family. And and he was saying, yeah, coach, I just proposed to my girlfriend. I'm getting married soon. I got to meet her, and so I'm invited to a wedding here in
Wow,
a few
that's
months.
awesome.
But it's relationships. It's having true, authentic relationships, and that transcends any sport, any teaching role, anything like that. There's something to be said for relationships building championships. So you better trademark that before I borrow that.
Yeah, my friend Connor, he's put it in his bio and everything, and I'm like, I need to get this for myself because I can't believe nobody else has thought about it. But it is
Yes.
great though when we talk about this, because I know when I've talked to Coach Walsh, that's one of his things that he's told. I had him on my podcast like a while back with a bunch of the other people who work at KTSW, and he was just like, I'm about relationships, and in order to have those relationships, you got to have trust, like you mentioned. So I mean, I've seen what you've done in videos and whatnot. And how much did you get to interact with the kids with before workouts stopped?
Well, I had about a day and a half.
Yeah,
That was it.
yeah,
So I got to meet them, and but this brilliant thing that we all discovered here recently, Zoom, has
yeah,
been pretty awesome. So it's not the same as building the
yeah.
relationships as I would normally, but it still works. We're still getting to know each other, and really, I can't wait to be there full time so we can make things really, really, really grow and mature into the coach player relationship that it needs to be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, another thing that you had mentioned in that interview that I watched was you had worked as a special ed teacher. you be involved at special ed in San Marcos, or will you be in a different role?
I'll be in a different capacity. I'll be teaching Avid, which that's another thing I'm very very passionate about. Uh, what's I'll first talk about special education. I got into that just it was really to get a high school job closer to where my family was, and so I was like, okay, I'll go for it. But I learned so many valuable lessons as a special education teacher that it became a passion for me. I mean, I worked with kids who were hearing impaired, visually impaired,
Mhm.
was a huge contributor to the special education field day, which eventually became Special Olympics for our district. And just seeing the small victories won with that is life changing. So I recommend volunteering for anyone who wants to make a difference. That's the way to go. But for what I'll be doing at St. Marcus is the Avid program, and in Avid, I've been a district director of Avid before, which I've led an entire school district's Avid program. But it goes hand in hand with my role as a recruiting coordinator. I mean, you're trying to get kids who otherwise haven't had an opportunity, or it hasn't been just a tradition within their family to get to college. You help them along their way and help them find what they need to be successful once they make it to college. And I mean, those two go hand in hand because you're teaching study skills, you're teaching preparedness, you're teaching how not to procrastinate, which I'm still learning that to this day, but it's something that we teach well. And it just helps prepare kids for the next level. And so, just if I had to give myself a title to sum up everything I do, I'm a college and career readiness championship coach. So I think that's what it would be.
Hey, there you go. And it doesn't have to be in sports, like you said. It's in all
Hmm.
levels. Well, we're happy to see that impact in San Marcos, Coach Nash. I would wrap things up, but I got two more questions for you. So,
Sure.
just one more. Going back to sports, what are your thoughts on the new district that the Rattlers were put in this year?
I'm excited, man. Coming from DFW, traditionally we're in the toughest districts, no
Yeah.
matter what, and so the challenge is going to be fantastic. I've been a part of programs that have played Westlake before in deep playoff runs, and would have ran into Lake Travis. We were a game away. We would have played them for state a couple of times. So I'm excited about that aspect. I'm also excited about all these guys that I've met uh, over the years through coaching clinics, AFCA, THSCA, through Zoom clinics here recently that are all around me now. Now all of a sudden we're in the same district, so it seems like I know these guys already. But I think it's a tremendous opportunity for San Marcos. I think it gives us a chance to play solid competition, build some confidence because we haven't played in so long. We haven't done really football related activities in months. So us getting a chance to line up against some of the best in the state is nothing but a good thing.
Exactly. And I was super excited when it happened because that was the district I grew up in. So I'm kind
Yeah.
of, as a broadcaster, I'm like, okay, I know these teams. Like, I knew Judson and Steele and Clemens a little bit. And of course, I'm
Hmm.
still going to have to do my homework, but it'll be a little bit less because I know, I just know how the schools are, I have their background, played against them and all that. So,
There you go.
but anyways, as a last question, Coach Nash, you do a podcast called 30 for 30, talking to various figures, high school coaches around Texas. Can you just talk about that for a little bit so our listeners can know about it and maybe even go listen?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'll start way back. The first rendition that I did was last year, and I made something
Mm-hmm.
called the I Coach podcast. And the idea was this: maybe you can hear it, maybe you can't hear it, but I've had a speech impediment my entire life, where I'll get stuck in a stutter and I won't be able to come out of it. Heavy lisp. So it was something for me to get outside of my comfort zone. So with me, I'm one of those guys. If I'm not good at something, I'm going to go try to do it. And not only am I going to try to do it, I'm going to try to do it at a high level. And then
Mm-hmm.
that way, there's a new challenge. So I began a podcast. So as Zoom hit, or Zoom as COVID hit, we were on these Zoom clinics. I have a buddy that's at the University of Kansas, and he's the director of player personnel, named Ed Jones.
Uh-huh.
And so I was on the phone with him. He's like, "Hey, man, I'm doing something. I'm doing a 30 for 30. And this is me having 30 conversations with 30 people from all different backgrounds, all different professions, so I can grow." I was like, "Man, that's brilliant." And I was like, "Are you recording it?" He's like, "No, no, I'm just having conversations." I said, "Okay, I want to have that conversation. I want to grow." Yeah. So we talked first, and then I said, "Okay, this is leading to something that could be pretty awesome." So in the 30 for 30, I just reached out to a bunch of figures that I want to learn more about, a bunch of coaches, a bunch of authors. I've talked to business owners, and I want to know the challenges that they face. And then kind of organically, it all kind of rolled into what do we do now that we're quarantined? Or what do we do now when we're in the face of injustice? Or,
Mhm.
what do we do now with the fear of our kids going back to school? And became these just amazingly in-depth conversations that honestly I've grown so much from just having those. And so I put it out. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on a YouTube channel, Coach Nash Football, and it's there for anyone to check out, man. And I promise you'll walk away learning something that you didn't know, or reinforcing something that you did know, and then maybe just opening up your mind to think about something that you may have never thought about before. So it's been tremendous. There are two more that are coming out, and it should wrap it up for the season. And then next June, we'll see if I have another idea for season two.
That is awesome. I tell you what, I listened to the one with, I forget his name, but he was one of Hutto's coaches. I listened to that one, and
Yes.
that was a great one. And I got to go listen to more, man, because it really did it. You'll take something away from it for sure. And I'm not just saying that just to say it on air and to get you to like me. Like I genuinely like. I really did take something away from it, and I think that all of the San Marcos community should go check that out because you're a part of it now, and you're a voice in this community, and all of our voices matter. So
Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that.
no problem. I'm happy to have you here, and thank you for taking the time to sit down with us.
Of course. Yeah, it was my pleasure. Look forward to collaborating a lot more in the future.
Yes, sir. I'll probably see you at practices. Thank you so much.